Hello everyone, Jeff here for Respawn Studios, back with another 100% achievement walkthrough of a game. This is for another indie game, The Park. Nice opening warning here. The text cuts off on the screen, but is a funny thing about the game messes with your sanity. This is perfectly normal and should not be any cause for psychiatry. A fair amount of the achievements, just like Sagebrush, are story related, but there are a couple optional ones. So again, I will be commentating a fair amount. But there is a really cool sequence a few minutes in that I will let the gameplay audio take over for. And again, the final sequence doesn't really need any explanations from me, so I will let the gameplay audio take over for that as well. But in the meantime, I believe this game costs $13, though it's routinely on sale during the spring, Black Friday, summer sales, things like that. So I would definitely recommend it. They've patched it a few times too. There's still some like trees and bushes that come in and out. The frame rate isn't great, but they have upgraded the textures and some things look nicer. It's also just, I think, a well-made game in terms of story and how it progresses. The pacing is really well done. But for our first achievement, one of the big optional things, you have to do this before you even enter the park, is right when you start moving, you turn right and exit the parking lot, and you head into this mist. You're not allowed to sprint yet, so you're just going to have to hold forward for a while, but eventually, you just keep holding forward, and do it until you start walking the other way, because there could be a point where your screen is all white and you think something's going to happen, but you have to keep moving forward. I've had that happen once or twice. But there we go, 100-point achievement. All the achievements in this game are either 50, 75, or 100 points, I'm pretty sure. Alright, but now we're just going to make our way toward the ticket booth and we'll start the game proper. We'll enter the park. We're actually about to pick up another achievement just for entering the park. I believe it's a 50-point achievement. So the story of the game is that you're a mom at the amusement park with your son. He's lost his teddy bear. So you go to ask if they happen to find him, but instead your son runs out of the car past you back into the park. So they let you in to find him. So you're trying to find him.
Lorraine. Don't blame yourself, Lorraine.
But, and again, if you're watching this as mostly a quick run through for achievements, hopefully you don't mind spoilers. As you'll find out, this guy talking to you is actually the detective that's interviewing you about, did you murder your son? And is all of this like an illusion and guilt trip for what actually happened? So there's a mechanic where you could hit B to shout, to look for Callum. That's actually one of the stats that the game tracks in the like dashboard, which is interesting. I looked at a flyer there. If you interact with that, it's actually pretty cool. It has some nice details about the park and other local attractions, I think including like a local hotel you can stay at. It's a nice touch. But as we're going up the escalator here, I think we get our second achievement. And it's going to transition from day to night, because why not? Horror games are usually at night.
The park is now closed. Have a safe journey home.
Alright, and once we arrive at the top of the escalator here, we are going to be allowed to sprint, and you do that simply by clicking in the left thumbstick. You do not have to hold it down clicked or anything. Once you click it, you'll be allowed to run. It does stop your run anytime the dialogue takes over of the main character, which is fairly often, but once she's done speaking, you'll be able to press down the left stick again, and that'll take over. You'll be able to sprint again. Alright, so here's what's going to end up being the final location of the game. the Funhouse, but you need a flashlight to access that, which you don't get until after the roller coaster, which is the last regular ride we're going to go on. I think there are only like 4 or 5 rides total in the park, and I've played through this game a lot. I've probably beaten this game over 50 times. I, for a long time, over 40 of those runs, thought even to get all the achievements, you had to go on each ride, but you definitely do not. So you do not have to go on like the whirligig kind of ride, and you do not have to go on the Ferris Wheel. So we're going to skip over both of those. But this is one of those cool parts of the game that I would like you to experience naturally as well. So I'm going to let the gameplay audio take over here. There are 2 achievements here, though. One is natural, just for going through this, but the optional one is a little bit into this. Instead of looking at the wall and hearing the story, we're going to turn around and look at the like mascot of the park, a guy dressed as a chipmunk named Chad, and we'll get a 100-point achievement for that. But I will pick back up in about 5 minutes when this sequence is over, so please enjoy.
Near a great forest, there lived a poor woodcutter, his wife and his 2 children, a boy named Hansel and a girl named Gretel. They were very poor and had very little to bite or sup. "What will become of us?" the woodcutter asked his wife one night. "I tell you what, husband, we will take the children into the thickest part of the forest tomorrow and abandon them there." "No, my wife, I cannot do that," said the man. "Then we will all 4 starve, you fool." Hansel and Gretel overheard their parents talking, and Gretel began to weep. "Do not fret, Gretel," Hansel said. He crept out of the hut and gathered white stones from the ground to fill his pockets. The next morning, the woodcutter leads the children into the forest. Before they leave, their mother gives them a slice of bread and warns them that they will get no more food that day. Clever Hansel leaves a trail of white stones behind them as they pass into the woods. When their father leaves them, the children wait a while, then follow the trail back to their parents' house. After receiving a thorough scolding from their parents for getting lost in the woods, the children are sent to bed without any supper. Hansel tried to sneak out and collect more white stones, but found that the door was locked. "Tomorrow I will take them into the woods myself," the wife told the woodcutter. In the morning, their mother gave them a slice of bread and led them deep into the forest once again. Hansel broke his bread into pieces and left a trail of breadcrumbs to lead them safely home. But hungry-eyed birds snatched up the breadcrumbs and his trail was destroyed. Abandoned by their parents and unable to find the trail home, the children wandered in the forest for 3 days. The children stumbled into a clearing with an exceedingly strange house. Its walls were made of gingerbread, and its windows were panes of clear sugar. Hansel, desperately hungry, ran forward and began to nibble on the walls. Nibble, nibble, little mouse. Who is nibbling at my house? An old woman emerged from the house, sniffing the air and peering around with cloudy eyes. Oh, you dear children, who brought you here? Just come in and stay with me. No harm will come to you. But Hansel and Gretel stayed back, for the old woman reminded them of their cruel mother. Come, children, don't be afraid. I have something for you. The old woman offered them 2 enormous lollipops. The children took them and began to eat. You see, nothing to fear here. Come inside, the old woman urged, and the children, still licking their sweets, followed. Once inside the house, the old woman changed. She stuffed Hansel into a cage and put Gretel to work, sweeping and cleaning her hut. Your brother will make a good mouthful, the old witch told Gretel. Once he is fattened up, I shall feast upon him. Time passed, and poor Hansel refused to eat, fearing the day that the witch would eat him. The witch, for her part, grew impatient. Today I will cook and eat your brother, Gretel. Climb inside and light the oven. But Gretel pretended not to understand. I do not know how. Where is the opening? Fool, the old witch said. The opening is here. And she moved to show Gretel. Seizing her courage, brave Gretel gave the witch a shove, and the old crone tumbled forward into the oven. Gretel slid a large iron bolt over the door to the oven. Gretel freed her brother Hansel, and together they lit a fire beneath the oven. And though she screamed and begged, the children sat by the oven until her screams had stilled and the witch was cooked. And then, because even children can't survive on sweets, they divided up the body of the old witch and ate her.
Okay, and we're back. So hopefully you enjoyed that part and the head of your swan boat turning around. Pretty cool little touch. So now we are going to be heading toward, I think it's the spin ride that we do not have to go on, but if you do go on it, it is pretty cool. Not just the ride itself, but also the horror element of it. So if you, again, are going to play this game, I'm going to leave some things up to mystery throughout, so I hope you enjoy them. Alright, but we're going to be getting one of the narrations here, so we can't sprint because she's talking. And as you're going to find throughout the game, she definitely had postpartum depression, and once she had her son, she seems to have started to go a little crazy. Unfortunately, it sounds like she became abusive and was projecting that and thought that her son was being abused by someone else. She couldn't recognize it in herself. And that's kind of what the game seems to be about, facing and confronting your own faults and traumas. She talks about electroshock therapy, pills she was on, and how that didn't help her. Okay, here's one of the optional things. There is randomly a car accident in the park, and you can open up the front door of the car there, and interact with a couple things, but I'll leave that to you if you want to see that. And we're just going to keep running along here. Some rocks fall down, but there's nothing to see up on the right. A couple points there are the figure of like the witch, but not right there. Alright, so there's the Ferris wheel, which we're going to be heading toward eventually, but first our kind of squid octopus ride here. And again, you're able to ride this if you would like. You could also inspect a safety report directly in front of us on the bench right there if you want to check that out. I think at least half the rides have such reports you can investigate. But the only achievement we can get here is right here over to the right on the last bench before the arch. You just examine this photograph. When you put it back down, you get, I think it's a 75-point achievement called Family Ties. But to ride that ride, you go into the operator's booth, you slow down the ride a couple times to bring it to a full stop, and then you exit, enter the area, and get on the ride yourself. And again, it's pretty cool. Be sure to be looking around when you're on the ride. There's some interesting sights. Alright, but as we continued through the arch right next to the bench where we just examined the photograph, there is another really cool optional thing. There's a narration that's going on right now, so I would wait till the narration is finished to get the full effect, but the hut to our right has a couple things going on. So if you're there once the narration's over, or if you're there and want to wait until the narration ends, there's some cool things to experience right there. But for our achievement run, we're just going to sprint when the narration finishes, and we're going to pick up 2 achievements very quickly here at the bumper cars. The first one is just through the gate on the right. We're going to interact with a box on top of a car. And this is going to bring about the electroshock therapy memory. And we'll get, I think it's a 75-point achievement here. Yikes. And then our other achievement will be when we run forward and examine the inspection report on top of the one bumper car that has its lights on right now. And again, I don't keep the report up on the screen. I would suggest to you when you play through to experience as much or as little as the game as you want. There are a lot of pretty messed up documents to find on benches, backstories of the guy that played Chad, all kinds of things. But once you interact with that document, you'll get this little cutscene. It looks like you're about to be hit, but it makes a sharp turn and opens up this next area for you. So we can now head toward the Ferris wheel. And we'll get the, I think, 50-point achievement here as we're making our way through. Yep, this shakes. Alright, the Ferris wheel is the other optional ride. You can definitely go on it, and it's just a nice little peaceful thing during the game. I think about 4 updates ago, so I think a little over a year ago, it broke the audio. When you're on the Ferris wheel, she used to tell a story about the guy that she has a tattoo of his name on her wrist for. I think it's that guy. Because she used to be a waitress at a diner, and she met one actually nice person, and it's her story of meeting that guy, who I assume she had the kid with. I don't really remember the story though, because again, it doesn't seem to play now anymore when you're on the Ferris wheel, but maybe they've patched that in a recent update. I haven't really been on the Ferris wheel in a little while, so be sure to check that out if you have any interest. And just like the other ride, you can slow it down, and when it stops, you're able to then get on the ride yourself. But for our next achievement, once the narration is finished, we're going to sprint past the Ferris wheel, and there is one of the little carts that is on it, that is on its own up against a rock. We're going to go inside of that, and on the right is a ticket. we're going to pick up the ticket, and that's going to give us the achievement and trigger a little cutscene. And here we go. And again, that will open up our next area. We're going to go to the roller coaster. And there's going to be 2 achievements in the roller coaster sequence. We're going to get an achievement simply for riding the roller coaster, which I think unlocks just a couple seconds after the ride begins. And then after we get off the roller coaster, before you exit through the turnstile thing, go to a picnic table that's on the right, and we're going to pick up a flashlight, which again we need to get into the Funhouse at the end of the game. But again, a narration is going on here, that's why we're not sprinting. But once that finishes, we'll be able to sprint and get on the one cart for the roller coaster.
Who take until we all go insane.
Couple pretty cool things happen on the roller coaster as well.
That's called choice supportive bias. I am honest. Callum really grinds my gears.
This narration going on right now is the clearly postpartum depression one, talking about how kids are just leeches and all of that. So the narrations get like more and more disturbing throughout the game. Okay, but once that's finished, again, we're able to sprint for a little bit. And it's nice because when we exit the roller coaster, the sprint will still be enabled. So we'll still be naturally sprinting. We don't have to push down the trigger again. Or the thumbstick again, I should say. And there we go, a next achievement. And you'll see the witch, or you'll hear the witch start talking. And if you look, you'll see his hand in the messed up, like, one finger hook hand. Because he's sitting right behind you. Nice. But because of the mental health aspects of the game, of course, that's not real. That's what you're picturing in your mind. Is any of this even real, of course, is the question, or is this all of your memory when you're being interrogated by the cop? Alright, but here we go. When we make the turn, things start to get pretty intense, because all of the noises and the motion triggers flashbacks, it seems, to when you were institutionalized. So you're picturing parts of the mental hospital, going through the corridors, and the final image you get is crashing into your son. Yikes. Okay, and here we go. Here's that final one. Alright, so again, when we get off the ride here, we're going to still be in sprint mode, which is nice. We're going to come down around and toward the picnic table, and we're going to pick up the flashlight. Now, I've never experimented if you can possibly do this without the flashlight. I wouldn't imagine you can. I would think it has to make you come back and get it. So just be sure to pick up the flashlight here, and it's also an achievement, so might as well. And now we're going to head toward the Carnival Games, where there are also a couple achievements. One for taking pills and one for finding the history of Chad, the guy that was in the chipmunk suit that apparently went crazy and killed people with his chainsaw that he had for an ice sculpture. Very nice. Alright, so we're getting another narration here. That's why we can't sprint. Right as we get through the arch here for the Carnival Games section, the first stall toward the right is going to have a newspaper article. And when you interact with and pick up that newspaper article and put it back down, you'll get the achievement for learning the history of Chad. You can also interact with the newspaper article in the same spot once things go a little crazy in this part, but I believe the article actually changes. So just to be safe, I would interact with the article the first time here. So here we go, read newspaper. I'm about 90% sure it's the same, but I don't even quite remember. I do pick it up the second time, and the words did seem to be different, so just to be safe, I might pick it up both times. But the achievement should unlock after that first one. Alright, so we're going to go back by this cotton candy sign, and we're going to find a murdered person, because, of course, examine corpse. You have to hit a button to leave this, and when you turn around, jump scare. We're going to see a vision of Chad. Alright, so now instead of going anywhere else, we're going to head back to the middle here. And we're going to pick up pills. And again, that's going to trigger kind of a asylum flashback. And we're going to have kind of a Silent Hill turn of the environment. Things are going to get worse. Okay, so we're going to turn around here and go out to the left, the only place you can. You could just walk into this, push it out of the way. We have to turn left because the witch will say you can't go that way on the right. Now, I don't know if you're required to bump into these, but I always bump into them because I'm used to doing it. And it just sets them flying, all the teddy bears. Alright, and we're going to be coming around to that same area with the newspaper article, which again you can interact with, but I believe it is like a different version of it. Yeah, that actually is totally different. Okay, but we're basically up to the final part of the game now. We're just going to follow the path around, and we're going to reach the end, and we're going to have a vision of, it seems, self-harm. Yikes, on top of everything else. But you're going to pass out and wake back up, and things will be back to quote-unquote normal. And then we're going to head toward the witch's head, which we encountered near the start of the game, but now we have the flashlight to be able to go inside. But that is when I'm going to let the audio take over, because that entire sequence and the part after it is amazing. It's probably the best part of the game. And again, you see this is a very short game, but I've always enjoyed it. Sure, the production values aren't great. It's probably much better optimized on PC, but I still very much enjoy it. Yeah, it's a very disturbing story, but I think they capture it very well. And it's very impactful how they have the game put together, especially this final sequence. So, the final achievements, just a couple things to keep in mind. We're going to get an achievement for entering the Funhouse. We're going to get an achievement for finishing the game, and I think those are the last two. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you have found this guide useful, and if you want to watch the last 10 or so minutes, please sit back and enjoy the game audio taking over.
I hate that sparkle in her weathered, watchful eyes. I think Callum is waiting for me inside. After they let me out, they gave me Callum back and sent me home with a handful of breadcrumbs. Home, bittersweet home. I barely recognized it. Where there had been color and light, there were shadows and regrets. Where there had been warmth, there was a bone-deep coldness that never went away. I tried my hardest to keep the ghosts at bay. Don, watching from the dusty corners while I tried to teach his son to read. My father, coldly assessing me and finding me lacking. I devoted myself to Callum and did the things that they told me. It will get better, they said. Every day will be a little better than the last. I'm in the woods now, lost and afraid. Things never got any better. Stories are told again and again, and from their shape we build our understanding of the world. Two children are led into the woods. They are lost for a time, but then are captured by an old witch. A child goes missing in Atlantic Island Park. He wanders lost for a time before finding his way into the mouth of an old witch. In the oldest version of this story, the mother and the witch were the same person. I never wanted to be the witch, but I am, aren't I? Callum? Callum? Callum?
Don't blame yourself, Lorraine. People lose things all the time. Take a deep breath and think about the last place you saw your son.
In my heart and mind, I always return to Atlantic Island Park.